Hello and welcome to Washington Exec's video series. I'm your host, Amanda Ziadeh, and with me today is Derek Kissos. He's the Executive Vice President of Strategy and Growth at HHS LLC. Thank you so much for joining me today, Derek.
Absolutely, Amanda. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, we've been covering the many ways industry has been responding to the pandemic internally and externally, and we've been in this for several months, longer than most had probably expected. So during these unprecedented times of heightened stress and uncertainty and concerns, how has your team been supporting its employees?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of three main things for us. Actually, back in 2014, we established what we call the HHS Care Fund. And so that's basically a support driven fund through our employees. So it's 100% contributions from our employees that gets taken out of each of the paychecks every cycle. And what that does is it really goes to provide assistance to individuals and their families for anything unexpected, whether that's illness, whether that's hurricanes. We've had a lot of those recently. And then especially with COVID-19 hitting. So in 2019, we paid out around $250,000 for our team members. And then this year, it's actually almost doubled. From January, I think we just closed out September on that. We had contributed over 400,000 to the team members, but 160,000 of that was just for COVID-19 relief. And so it's been really helpful as we have a lot of hourly team members spread out over the world to really help them feel more comfortable that they can ask for help and assistance if they need it.
Mhm.
The other thing we did is as soon as WHO labeled COVID-19 as a pandemic, we actually stood up a COVID-19 resources hub. So as one of our big capabilities is cleaning in hospitals, providing food service in hospitals, we had to act very fast and retroactively and proactively kind of change our best practices, how we disinfect, how we clean, how we prepare food. And so we stood this communications hub so we could be in constant communication, not only with our 17,000 plus team members around the world, but also our managers who have to then disseminate that information out. So it was a really good way for us to communicate real time as we develop these best practices, as information was coming in from agencies to get out to the team. And then the last thing I'll basically say is because we're spread across 6 different divisions, some were more impacted than COVID than others. So take our resorts and hospitality division, for instance. As resorts shut down all over the country and all over the world, we had team members who were worried about, what are they going to do with their jobs? Are they going to be laid off? And so what we actually did, we were able to align those into our healthcare division through the surge. So as healthcare organizations, hospitals needed to find more staff because recruiting was tough during all this, we were able to realign them to that division. So we didn't lose anyone. We didn't have to make major furloughs, layoffs. And so we were able to utilize those folks as the times came and crunch time came.
Great. Awesome. So have you seen a shift in mission prioritization with customers as well, or how are you supporting them through the COVID-19 related challenges that they may be having?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll kind of answer that by giving you a couple anecdotes for each of our divisions. So in government division, one of the things that we did early on, as soon as some of the first infected COVID-19 passengers off the cruise lines came into military treatment facilities, we were just happened to be one of the EVS or environmental services providers at that medical treatment facility. So we actually worked hand in hand with government agencies on how to establish these best practices, how to disinfect fully through high touch areas. We're really a great resource to not only that facility, but also the government agencies putting out guidance on how to disinfect. Then the other thing I'd say on the government side, as just like many other vendors out there, we've really done a good job in working with medical treatment facilities to, I guess, reimagine underutilized spaces, create those as COVID-19 containment centers, treatment centers, and really make those underutilized spaces available as COVID-19 would surge up and down. In our healthcare market, because we have such a big culinary business, one of the really neat things we did, we stood up 2 programs. One was called Essential Market. And from April through July, August timeframe, we basically stood up this essential market that provided deli meats, produce, supplies, toilet paper, hand sanitizer to frontline staff at these hospitals that didn't have time to get out. As stores kind of structured their opening and closing times with COVID, they couldn't get to these stores and provide for their families. So we actually brought these products to the frontline hospital staff at cost. So whatever we could get them through our supply chain market, we brought to them, and it went over really well. And then on the other side of that, we stood up a program called Hoagies for Heroes. And so for the same frontline staff, we provided free sandwiches, free drinks, as they're working long shifts, can't get out and get something to eat as they're, performing life-saving procedures. And so those are two kind of key hallmarks we did in healthcare. And I'll touch on two other quick ones. So in hospitality, as I mentioned, as they started to open again, it really changed the dynamic in hospitality and resorts where, it's really predominantly been about the appearance of cleanliness as you would clean and have room turnover in resorts. It really kind of did a step change into actually being disinfected, having specialized teams cover high touch areas, having them do common areas, foot traffic, all of those things. And so given our experience in hospitality and healthcare and how we disinfect hospitals, they've really come to us and said, help us figure this out. We've never had to clean like this before. So really advise us on that journey. And it's the same way in our education division, where in education, as they're trying to get students back to campus and get enrollment rates high for community colleges, universities around the country, they're having to sell students and families on it's safe. You can come back to campus. We're going to disinfect areas. We're going to prepare food in certain ways. And so for us, it's been really great in terms of being able to leverage our 45 plus years in disinfecting hospitals to these other markets that we're now operating in. And then the last one I'll kind of say is our aviation, which is our newest division. It's the same way, right? That kind of appearance of cleanliness to now disinfection, making travelers feel not only on the aircraft, but the facilities themselves, that it's safe and you can now get back to air travel. And I think so we're doing our own very small part to help economy kind of get back to normal, help these customers get back to some sort of sense of normalcy after COVID starts to wind down, hopefully.
Right, right. And these are, critical industries, especially right now. So that's
Right.
that's great. And my last question for you is, going forward, how is your team preparing for, I guess, a post-COVID area, whenever that may be, and in what ways are you building a stronger foundation for growth in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So our executive team really put some thought into this. As I said before, there's been some companies impacted harder than COVID-19. What we've done instead of doing layoffs and realigning corporate staff, we really kind of, for the cliche term, leaned into that and said, let's use this time where we're not traveling as much. We're not getting out to customer sites. We're not selling and doing these things while people are kind of stabilizing during COVID. And we've really looked at ourselves and said, we preach providing values to our end customers, no matter the division. And we really took a look at ourselves internally at a corporate level and said, let's figure out how we can break down internal stovepipes, integrate across silos and corporate departments, and provide better value to our corporate customers, which are division leaders and our operations out on the ground. And so what we've done is we've kicked off an initiative called Business Process Integration 2020. It's not an uncommon term, but we've really kind of attached all our department heads, myself, our CEO and chairman, and we've taken a strong look around how we can create ourselves more efficient and more effective. And it's really paid off big time in making our support out to the field so much faster, so much more efficient. And then the last thing I'll kind of say about what we're doing is, during the peaks and valleys that we've seen in COVID around the country, instead of having some of our areas like travel, logistics, all of these places that aren't doing as much now internally, we've actually realigned them to recruiting. We've realigned them to operational support. And so instead of furloughing folks again, we've, as a privately owned business and the founders really involved in it, we actually have a pretty good value on culture, delivering on our promises both to customers and ourselves. And so, we want to make sure our employees, both at the corporate level and on the operational side, know that just because this is going on, we're not going to leave them out there. And so we've really done a good job in realigning resources wherever we've needed to support operations.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing all this with us. It's a challenging time, so we appreciate your time and keeping us up to date with what HHS is doing. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. Thanks so much for having us in HHS again.